Hey everybody, it's Mike coming at you from the wall of metal. Haven't gone to the wall for a while to pull any bricks out to show you guys, so I thought I'd do a quick episode of 666. If you don't remember, that's where I take 3 sets of 6 bricks and I tie them all together with some kind of common theme. My motivation for this episode was going to see Entombed AD live the other night. Entombed AD, one of the kind of classic originators of the Swedish death metal sound. I don't incorporate them into the new wave of Swedish death metal because Entombed was kind of one of the original waves of Swedish death metal. Anyway, what I thought I'd do, kind of thinking a little bit about that nostalgically, was I would do take 6 bricks that are a new wave of British heavy metal. I'll take 6 bricks that are a new wave of Swedish heavy metal. And then I'd take my final 6 bricks that are new wave of American heavy metal. You can feel free to disagree with how I group things out. You can feel free to disagree with how I place some of these albums as far as their influence and their effect on the overall scene of metal. That's fine, but these are just the ones that I've chosen, okay? Let's start off with the first set of 6. We're going to go with the new wave of British heavy metal. I wish I had much more of some of these more obscure bands that set this off, but honestly, I was like 8 years old, or 9, 10 years old at the time, and it was hard to get a bunch of albums and releases, so I'm always trying to update my collection of the new wave of British heavy metal classics. We'll start with this one. This is Angel Witch. This is live. Kind of a Next we're going to have Venom. This is Welcome to Hell. Such an influence on all things heavy to come after the late 80s. Next up, one of my favorite new album bands, Raven, and possibly one of the better live albums ever recorded. This is Live at the Inferno. This is on my vinyl list. And everybody probably has this. Probably not a unique choice to show, but one of my favorites of the genre. This is Iron Maiden's Killers. A lot of people look to the solo album. I like this one better. And even then, I thought everything they did beyond the Diano days was the best of their work. But there's no denying how influential this album was. Everything from just the cover art and the artwork and the songs and the production down. This might be one of the staples of the new wave of British heavy metal right here. And some people want to debate whether this was heavy metal or not. I don't care. Saxon was very influential in the movement, and their sound was laid down to many hard rock, swagger, blues-based metal bands. This was not one of their first albums. There were a couple more before this, but I chose this one because this was always one of my favorites. This is Strong Arm of the Law. And you could say the same about this last album. Some debate whether this is heavy metal. Maybe they aren't now. Maybe they never will be again. But when this album came out, Def Leppard, High and Dry, this is one of the greatest hard rock, heavy metal, whatever you want to call it, albums of all time. I love this album. It's just got great songs from start to finish. And it was such an influence on all the hard rock that was going to come later into the 80s. Let It Go, hit another hit and run, High and Dry, Bring On the Heartbreaks, Switch 625. You can't go wrong. That's an ultimate album side right there. One of the best ever. All right, that's my 6 bricks for the new wave of British heavy metal. Let's move on to the European scene, the Gothenburg sound. Kind of, historically, I think it was 94, Korn's debut album came out. You had a lot of new metal kind of going on then, and that was kind of the grunge movement, and heavy metal was struggling to survive. And you had this explosion in Gothenburg of these Swedish bands that were kind of getting back out with a more classic-oriented metal sound and had a unique stamp of their own. And this, of course, is one of the albums that is credited for kind of pioneering that whole movement. This is At the Gates with Slaughter of the Soul. Very raw and visceral, and a good blueprint for what was to come. Sorry about the glare there. And kind of directly from At the Gates, some of the members from that band came out with this one. This was really the first introduction I had to this movement, and this is the album that I listened to that really led me to believe that thrash metal was going to rejuvenate and be viable again. I absolutely loved this album when it came out. I thought this is exactly what the metal scene needed. I credit another couple of classic bands along the way that kept the whole spirit and tradition of thrash metal alive while it was kind of germinating in the seeds of all the music fans' minds. We'll talk about some of those other bands later, but a couple of bands that aren't included in this. I think that Carcass with Heartwork and Pantera with Vulgar Display of Power, those are two albums that were pivotal in the survival of classic thrash and heavy metal. And then the third brick, this is Soilwork. This is the Chainheart Machine. Soilwork is one of the bands that I think has been consistent over the years. About everything they've done has been good. My only concern, or my only gripe with a lot of this new wave of Swedish death metal is that a lot of it is very similar sounding, and the albums are good, and the musicianship is good, and everything's really great about the music, except that unlike a lot of the 80s thrash and classic heavy metal, the songs don't resonate with you. They don't stay with you. You don't remember their lyrics and their hooks and their choruses. I mean, they don't digest as well as I think classic 80s thrash and the traditional heavy metal. This is Arch Enemy. This is Burning Bridges. Personally, for me, Arch Enemy was another one of the bands that in the early 90s kind of got me really reacquainted with thrash specifically, and led me to believe that thrash was going to make a huge comeback. On a personal note, I remember hearing about these guys going on a tour. They were on tour with actually an American metal band, classic American metal band, Nevermore. Anyway, long story short, they toured together and they did a show here in Indianapolis at a place called the Emerson Theater, and I got to meet these guys. They were kind of fairly new. Wasn't very many people there, but it was just one of the first experiences I had with this new wave of thrash metal of any type, and it was a good harbinger of things to come. And just everything you could want about metal and thrash was present on this album. Lead guitar work, song structure, riffs. The vocals were a step up from the debut. Just a great album. If you don't have it, you need to have Arch Enemy, Burning Bridges. Then this one is The Crown, Death Race King. I kind of credit this album here with kind of kick-starting the whole death and roll kind of concept. You had the Swedish death metal meets Motorhead. Again, had the pleasure of seeing this band perform live in a small venue, and this is just an incredible album. Death Race King by The Crown. And then finally, In Flames. This is with Clayman. This is my favorite In Flames album. You can say what you want about this band over the years, and I can understand all the criticism. They've really changed their sound, but this album was tremendous when it came out, and this particular copy, I don't know if you can see it very well, but it's autographed by the band. Again, the same venue I was talking about where I saw The Crown and Arch Enemy. These guys came and did a show, made an appearance at a local record store, and I was fortunate enough to be able to meet them and get them to autograph this album. Good stuff. In Flames. All right, and moving on to the United States of America, we have the new wave of American heavy metal. I'm not here to debate whether this band is good, whether you like them, hate them, I don't care, it's your opinion, but there is no denying that this album right here, Slipknot's debut, was influential in the resurgence of thrash-oriented metal in the United States. You cannot argue that. You can argue whether they're good, but you cannot argue the influence that this record had on what was to come over here in the USA. And I remember hearing this for the first time and thinking, man, they're really onto something. It was just a classic transition from the nu metal kind of thing that was going on into the moving into a return to form for classic metal and thrash. Kind of more so in that direction was this album. This is Shadows Fall of One Blood. Saw these guys when they were still young. Same venue, Emerson Theater, Indianapolis, Indiana. If you ever get a chance to go there to check out a show, do it because it's very nostalgic. But this album for me had it all. This was kind of a you heard Metallica in this, you heard some Anthrax in this, you heard some Slayer in this, you heard all the great stuff that you have been missing for years in this band with a new flavor to it that was, the main ingredient of that flavor was the sound that was going on with this new wave of Swedish American metal. So you had elements of, Slayer and Metallica, and throwing in some of this Swedish death metal sound to boot. Unfortunately, that was a blueprint for a lot of generic and sameness sounding stuff in this genre, and we're kind of moving away from that now, which is, I think, good. But anyway, you can't deny the influence that this band had on keeping metal alive here in the States. And this is God Forbid. This is the album 4, Constitution of Treason. I picked this one because I think this was just they were at the height of what they were doing. They had a couple more albums come out before this, but this band was another band out of the East Coast, Massachusetts area that was flying the flag of the new wave of American metal, and this album has it all, man. Great, absolutely great guitar work from the Doyle brothers. Vocally, this album was a little more diverse and accessible and easier to listen to. The musicianship on this thing is just amazing. The songs are great, and this is a great listen. And you can hear all the kind of classic influences on this. You can hear the classic American thrash influences. You can hear the Iron Maiden influence. This is just a great metal album, and I highly recommend it if you don't have it. And again, another band that some people like, some people hate. Doesn't matter. This is Killswitch Engage. This is I believe this. I think this is the second one. This is The End of Heartache. I picked this one just because I thought this was a little better sounding album than their debut, and of course, Andy Sneap mixed it, so that might have had something to do with that. But again, a lot of people don't like this band, but I think that what they were doing at the time was about the closest thing that you could get to what is now our new wave of thrash metal that we're seeing, that we started to see in the late 2000s to now. But I absolutely loved this when it came out. I still think that Killswitch Engage, if you want to call them metalcore or whatever you want, I think that they just put out a new record recently, and it's a great record. And these guys, if you're going to pick one band of a genre to say they're doing it right, Killswitch Engage has been doing it right since the late 90s. And kind of to transition into a different kind of style, this is Lamb of God. This is New American Gospel. So, you can't have the new wave of American heavy metal without the New American Gospel. What else is there to say about Lamb of God? This is raw and visceral, and it only got better from here. I remember seeing these guys live in their infancy at a place called Pierre's up in Fort Wayne, and as soon as I saw them, I knew that these were going to be the next big thing in American metal, and sure enough, they were. And along that capacity, stylistically, nothing like what was going on the East Coast, but I chose Mastodon. This is Leviathan. I saw these guys play with High on Fire in literally like what was a garage somewhere in Indianapolis. I don't even remember what the address was or where the place is even still there. But I remember after watching their set thinking, these are the next big thing too. And sure enough, they were. And it wasn't long after that before they were sharing the stage with Slayer on big American tours. The couple albums before this, their debut was really raw and kind of a good indicator of what might to come, and they've tweaked their sound with every album, getting a little more commercially friendly each way. But this one here, this Leviathan, was still angry and raw yet melodic and accessible and thrashy, and it has. I think this is my favorite of their catalog, and that's why I chose it. All right, so that's the six. That's the six new wave of British metal. 6 new wave of Swedish metal, 6 new wave of American metal. Again, I didn't pick them necessarily for their historical context or their greatness. Just went to the wall, picked out some random bricks. Let me know what you think about some of those albums I showed. If you love them, if you hate them, let me know what some of the ones that you might have chosen. Especially the new wave of British heavy metal. I'm always trying to learn more and more about the more obscure bands that I never had any of their material. But I think we'll wrap it up for today. That's an episode of 666. I'm metal, you're metal. Let them know you're metal. Bang your head, throw the goat, and I'll see you next time.